So Rosie was the first death that I experienced as a child. Like, I went to funerals of older family members, but I couldn't grasp death really until, and I can't even say that I grasped too much of it then, because I was only 11 going on 12 at that time. And I just remember after that, even though it took me a long time to process what had happened, I was just numb. I was really just numb.
Rosie's school friend Stacy remembers her as brave and loyal.
There's a picture of Rosie sitting on her porch. Even though it's been over 20 years, now looking at her, it is bringing me back to that time. It feels like now I just saw her yesterday. You know, this is how she looked.
I remember seeing her was I was leaving gym class, and we didn't have any classes together at all. I can't even remember exactly how we met because we didn't have any classes, so it must have been just something we were fated to meet. But I know that we would have had to meet in between classes. And the thing that was most memorable about Rosie was the fact that she was one of those little girls that would check people. She really would. And even adults, you know, it might be considered disrespectful now, of course, being an adult. But when she felt something was wrong, she was very boisterous about it. And me, you know, being in school, I was bullied. I didn't say too much to anybody except for my little close friends that I had around. She was always nice to me. So, you know, to have somebody so boisterous and, you know, would go off on somebody if they felt they were wrong, be very nice to you. That's the one thing I remembered about her. You know, I admired that because she had a voice, especially to be as small as she was. And that's, you know, to find out what happened to her, very hurtful, you know, especially now being an adult and being a mother. Last time I saw Rosie, she was leaving gym class, and I noticed that she had a haircut. She didn't have long hair like the little girl in the documentary. She always had like a low haircut. It wasn't like a mushroom, but it was just whatever style it was, like came down around, and it was just cut short. I remember that must have been a style back in the mid-90s. This was 96. I remember stopping her and saying, "You got a haircut, it's so pretty." And I touched it and I was like, "Your hair's so soft." And she was so happy that I admired her haircut. She was really happy about her haircut. And I didn't see her again after that. And it wasn't unusual because we didn't see each other much. We didn't have classes together. We would talk on the phone every now and then. But I remember going to my second period science class. His name was Mr. Bender. And we all sat down. And I remember it being a little unusual because Mr. Bender, he was always this person. He was a great teacher. I would always come down the hall and he would go, "Stacy, Stacy, Stacy." And that morning he didn't do it. I just figured maybe he didn't feel good. And he told us all to settle down. He wanted to talk to us. And he started to tell a story about a little girl named Rosie. Now, I had ADD. I wasn't really paying attention. But I know that he ended up saying at the end of the story that the little girl named Rosie was found in an abandoned house. Well, then my mind kind of clicked in like, what do you mean? It didn't occur to me that he was talking about my friend Rosie because, you know, to me, at that time, that didn't happen, especially to kids. I never knew a child to be hurt. So I thought of Rosie, but I was just thinking that they had the same name. It wasn't until the bell rang and I ran into one of my friends and she was crying and I was like, "Was he talking about Rosie? Rosie? And she said, "Yes." I didn't cry because I was, like I said, I was 11 going on 12 and I couldn't process that at all. Now it's a lot easier to process because I didn't know the details of her death. Even reading the paper. At that time, I remember reading the paper over and over. And I remember they said they didn't know who did that to her. And I still couldn't process that. So for a long time, I remember making little notes of people that she didn't get along with. I was going to mail that to the detective. Of course, now I know that's irrational because these were little kids that she would get into it with at school. But I just remember not knowing how to feel. And I remember not having anybody to talk to about it because I didn't even know what to say. I didn't know how to process it. And then, during the documentary interview, I found out years later that there was another little girl, Malissa Thomas, that was killed a year before Rosie. And the interviewer says to me, Melissa's article was so small. I remember Rosie being in the article tons of times in the newspaper. I never heard of Malissa. And of course, this is where race comes into it. And I bring this up because of the whole George Floyd situation. Malissa was a little black girl. Rosie was white. And it's just, it makes me think that maybe if Melissa's article was a bit bigger, people would have remembered it. People would have been more cautious. This man would not have gotten away with doing it again. Possibly someone would have recognized some kind of pattern with him. And it's just sad that Melissa's case kind of seemed like it was swept under until, it happened to Rosie, and it was like, well, maybe we have this serial killer, because Malissa died a horrific death too. And, watching the documentary, on the flip side, thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a part of this documentary. And if you want to watch it, the link is down below. You do have to pay. I think it's $3. And the thing is, it was very hard to watch because I don't think Rosie had a lot of family members here left that were alive. I heard her father was very sick. Her stepmother did the interview. But I think the hardest thing watching that interview from a mother's standpoint now is watching Melissa's mother. That, if you watch the interview, Melissa's mother, it's so hard not to cry because as a mother, as a parent, period, you want to protect your children. And it's just like that one instance she replays in her head that she wasn't there. And it's so heartbreaking. It really is heartbreaking. But in any case, I am glad that I was a part of this documentary because, a lot of people pass every day. And a lot of times when they pass, especially in a horrific way, life goes on and people tend to forget. And even though both of those young ladies were here temporarily, very short lives. Malissa Thomas was 13 years old. Rosie was going on 13 years old. And what that man did was just horrific. Like I read the article. They don't even go into detail too much into the interview. They give you just enough to know it was terrible, awful, just inhumane. But when I actually read, one thing I will say is during documentaries, I have watched people kind of smile. And I'm like, gosh, they're talking about something so serious. Why are they smiling? And now I understand, because I was trying so hard not to cry. And I'm not saying they try to get you to cry, but they try to put you back into that moment. And, me going back into that moment as an adult is much different from when I was a 12-year-old. Because, I couldn't process it then. Now, you know, and I'm reading this newspaper articles and the court cases and things, and I'm like, he was very evil, very evil, very evil. It's unfortunate that he died in prison. Very unfortunate. I honestly, excuse my language, I wish somebody beat his ass to death, because it was terrible what he did to those little girls. And I was going to say, as far as like the interview, like I was trying to hold myself together. It was nerves. You know, I wasn't crying because I'm like, I'm trying to keep it together. I'm trying to keep it together. You know, I don't have no hair. If I get to crying, the makeup is going to go to shooting everywhere. But I'm honored that they called and asked me. You know, throughout the years, I would type in Rosie Davenport. I would even type in Melissa Thomas, and I would leave comments under videos and things like that. And I think that's how they found me, to be a part of the documentary. And I'm honored, and I really hope, I'm very spiritual, so I do believe the soul continues. So I do hope that both of those young ladies are at peace, and the documentary and their memories, I hope that they feel honored and things like that. But like I said, if you want to check it out, it was very interesting. It came on the ID channel, and it's called The Lake Erie Murders. That episode is called A Trail of Frozen Tears. It was hard, but like I said, I was honored to be a part of it. The town.